eyes wide open. In the heart of Appalachia, legends whisper of unseen spirits and shadowy figures. Don't forget to subscribe as we step deep into the misty woods. Let's take a look.
Come out. Come out from behind the tree. I see you. Okay, we gotta go.
All right, guys. I've got about a 6-foot hole dug here, and we've hit rock. But listen to this.
This is my story with a cryptid experience that I had tonight. Me and my husband decided we wanted to go like star watching and I live in Alabama, and about an hour away from here, there is a spot where you can apparently see the Milky Way, and it's in the Bankhead National Forest. So we drove out there, and when we got down this certain road, there was like no lights, no people, and we started getting an off feeling. And I had prayed before, like I was like, Lord, if there's anything bad, I pray that we'll get a warning about it before like anything bad can happen to us, So we're going down this road, and this literally just happened like 45 minutes ago, so I just got home. There was trees, and there was this light in the middle of the road. Keep in mind, we're away from any city. We're deep in a national forest. There was this like white light at the end of the road, kind of like flickering. And then we saw some of them darting in the woods, and I was like, okay. And then this is where it gets weird. So then there was like a bunch of like trees that were like, looked like they were snapped in half on one side. And these were big trees, like big trees. If you don't believe me, look up Bankhead National Forest. Look at the trees. They're huge. So anyway, there's a bunch of them like just crushed down. We haven't had any huge major storms recently. It was weird. Right after we saw that, and right after we saw the blinking light at the end of the road, we saw this creature. I was sitting on the passenger side. It was like probably 7 or 8 feet tall. And it was like we caught a glimpse of it, and then it disappeared. And my husband said, what is that? And he like freaked out, and I said, I didn't see anything, because I've heard of like the Appalachian rules, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna apply that here. I'm gonna pretend like I didn't see that. And then we get to the spot where we're supposed to stargaze, and we have this like just sinking feeling, like something's off, So I was like, don't drive any farther down there, just stay right here. There's no light pollution. I'm just gonna look right here. And there is nobody there. My husband did bring a gun, and so he like shined his gun light across, the field to see where even we were. And right after we did that, or he did that, we heard this whistling noise, but it did not sound like a human whistle. It did not sound like an animal. It did not sound like a bird. It was like raspy and like very disturbing, and it hit something in my soul that felt bad. And he looked at me and said, what was that? And I said, I don't know, I didn't hear anything. Again, sticking to rules. And then after that happened, I guess because he said, did you hear that? It sounded like it was even closer and louder, and it made me have the most paralyzed feeling in my body, and so did it for him. Luckily, we were in the car, and I just said, go. Just go. Don't talk about it, and just go. Get out of here. And we got out of there. Thank God we're home. Thank you, Jesus. Nothing bad happened, but I think I'm sharing this because, for one, it actually kind of like really freaked me out. Like, I believe in conspiracy theory things and stuff like that. I know there's a lot more to this world than what we could ever possibly imagine. I believe that I was very heavily protected by Jesus, and, I got the warning and I got out of there. But needless to say, if somebody tells you things about the woods, like don't whistle at night, if you see something that you didn't, blah, 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 like, just follow those rules. You can choose to not believe my story or believe it, but I'm one of those people that like have always thought like, yeah, skinwalkers and cryptids, whatever, could exist, but maybe not. No, like they do. I experienced it.
I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and I lived in a haunted house. It was my grandmother's house. She was not doing well, so I moved in with her to take care of her right after I graduated high school. This house creeped me out when I was younger because it was a big 2-story house in the woods, and the basement was extremely dark. And I got this weird, like, scary dark energy from the basement. I don't know if it was just because it was dark and I was scared of the dark, or now as an adult, I think it's because there was actually a dark energy in that house. I wouldn't even go to the bathroom by myself when I was a kid, because to walk to the bathroom, you had to walk past the entrance to the basement, which was just pitch black stairwell with these huge windows looking out to the pool. So anyways, I moved in with my grandmother to take care of her. She wasn't doing well. The first occurrence that happened in this house, I heard footsteps rushing to her room and stopping directly beside her bed, to which she said, "I've been waiting for you." It was terrifying, and to this day, I will not sleep in the dark. I have a lamp on in my room, and I'm 30 years old, and I'm not afraid to admit it. In the Appalachian Mountains, things happen after dark. Things live in the shadows, and if you hear something, you do not respond to it. I know for a fact that things were in this house. My grandmother was bedridden. She could not get up. Things would be moved in the kitchen. Things would be moved all around the house. I would hear footsteps. I would hear doors close. I would hear whispers. I would see shadows walk by. Things would scratch at the glass outside the house. It actually shattered a glass panel one time because something sounded like it had these really long fingernails and just scratched down the glass. I didn't look because it was dark. And you do not look outside the curtains at nighttime in Appalachia because it's just, you don't do it. The next day, that glass panel was actually shattered. I had a friend to come over to my house one time. It was the first time he'd ever been there. And we were walking from the living room upstairs to the basement where my bedroom was. Walked down there, and as we were walking, I noticed he kind of looked to the side like this. And when we got down to the basement, he said, "Who is that man?" I said, "What man?" He said, "There was a man walked past us in the hallway." I said, "No, there wasn't." So I ended up showing him a picture of my grandpa who had passed away in 2005, and he said it was not him. I don't know who he saw or what he saw, but things that happened in that house in Appalachia, I mean, that started a whole chain reaction of other things that happened in my life. But truly living in a haunted house, a house where unexplainable things happen, is so hard to talk about because people just start calling you out and saying you're lying. Just because you haven't experienced something does not mean you're lying. And if you're from Appalachia, you know that things are unexplainable, and you know you just don't ask questions. You just don't interact with them.
Okay, I'm finally gonna do a story time instead of just writing it out, and I'm just gonna give a quick summary of what happened. First of all, if my phone had more storage space than it did, I probably wouldn't need a story time because I would have been able to record most of everything except whenever I was like getting attacked and like running. But it said I was recording for about 30 seconds and then it stopped and said no storage space and it saved that 5-second clip. But I guess it's better than nothing still. So pretty much the thing attacked the tent about 3 times, and I recorded when it attacked the second time because the first time, obviously, I was trying to find something to defend myself, and at that point there was really nothing to do, so I just started recording while he was calling the people in the house. So pretty much we were sleeping, and my boyfriend woke up first to something that sounded like a zombie walking towards the tent, like snarling and all this. So the thing came up from behind. We were sleeping against the tent, like wall, our heads were. And it came up and it snarled up to us right where our heads were. It couldn't see inside the tent, everything was closed up. But it still came up right to where our heads were and it started like sniffing on us through the tent. And then it was pressing in, and my boyfriend was up at this point, but I wasn't, so he woke me up and then it was like instant fight or flight mode because this was not human sounding at all, and it was about 8 feet tall. We could see the figure through the tent. It was about 8 feet tall, and I'm like, okay. So it starts walking around, scratching at the tent, doing all this, and eventually it goes to the entrance and it finds a weak point in how the floor is not sealed down at the bottom. It was pushing on it. So my boyfriend starts kicking and punching it. Get the hell out of here. We have flashlights flashing at it. A bear usually runs and doesn't mess with that. So it ran off, and it was only about 30 seconds until it came back angrier. So that's when I realized there's really nothing we can do about this except keep fighting it. So he was fighting at it, and I tried to take that recording real quick. And then probably about right after that, his brother didn't answer the phone, so he called his brother's girlfriend who was in there sleeping. And very luckily, she woke up and she picked up. So I was like crying on the phone. I'm like, you need to come out here right now and tell us what's outside this tent right now. Like, we're getting attacked. So she turns the porch light on and she opens the sliding door and the thing just stops and it's gone. And she says, there's nothing out here. So I don't understand where it could have hid that fast and made no noise and just disappeared. So yeah, she comes and says there's nothing out here. And we're like, how's there nothing out here? But then his brother comes out and comes down to our tent. So he comes down and we explain what happened, and we start going with flashlights and looking around the whole yard and everything to see if we can find it. And we didn't end up seeing anything when we looked that time. And another important part to this story that was just something that added to make it more terrifying but wasn't directly a threat was the screaming. It sounded like a woman screaming in the woods, and it was like different directions. And the first night we stayed there, we heard like a baby crying sound, and then it sounded like it got mauled and dragged away. So I disregarded that the first night and I just kind of ignored it. But the second night, clearly we shouldn't have ignored it, but it's okay. So yeah, we're looking around with the flashlights and those noises, the screaming and everything is going on and it's starting to freak everybody out too. So eventually, I end up going up on the deck and trying to turn my flashlight off and just wait while my boyfriend and his brother sit in the tent and wait to see if it happens. And, they heard stuff, but it wasn't the same as whenever we were all in there and vulnerable. That's when it went full out on us. So eventually I give in and I go to sit in the tent with them, and this is where we're in a vulnerable position again because everybody else went inside and went to sleep. So we're all sitting in there and we're just waiting to hear footsteps. And his brother says, I thought I heard footsteps, but it was just my coat. And he was like dragging it on the chair like that was just my coat. And then my boyfriend says, no, you have to be careful. It blends in with the wind sometimes. And then the whole entrance gets kicked in at me. Just like 5 people kicked this tent all at once, but there was no footsteps that came up to the tent. And after that, there was no footsteps walking away, running away, nothing. It was just and nothing else. They go outside and there's nothing out there. Couldn't see anything. Nothing out there again. So that part right there is the reason that I was wishing it was a bear the whole time, but that there's no logical explanation to that part right there. So it couldn't be. Plus, it was 8 feet tall. I don't know how I could excuse that for being an animal either. So we continue looking around and just like sitting in different positions trying to see if we can catch it. And they're screaming all through the woods, weird noises and all of this, but it doesn't like when we're out and over it and not vulnerable. But they sat in the tent. Him and his brother sat in the tent. And I was like in the kitchen at the window kind of looking out. Couldn't see much, but I was like looking out and I was on the phone with them while they were in the tent just in case I had to run out. And we had code word red in case it was touching the tent. And they used the code word one time. They said red because by the tree back in the yard they heard a screeching. Like the screeching was pretty close that time. So I went out and I couldn't see anything there. So it pretty much was that, just screeching and all these weird noises trying to bait us into the woods, like baby crying and whatever, for the rest of the night, and nobody was going in the woods, so it wasn't working for it. And I just wanted them to come inside. That's all I wanted, just come inside and just end it. But they were out there, and I was awake until the sun came up most of the way. So when the sun was up enough to cover the yard, the trees were still dark. And I went out there, and as I was getting into the tent, there was like this laughing in the woods, like where it was still dark, like a friggin' like kid laughing or something, like. So yeah, I could feel the vibe at that point that it wouldn't go in the sun or anything. So I was just like, when you hear that stuff all night, it didn't even faze me at that point. So I get in the tent and I'm up for like a couple hours until I was finally able to sleep until the daytime, completely like 1 o'clock or so. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We kept the tent up for like a night after that because we couldn't get over it and go back and take it down. But we've now taken it down, and I'm just wondering now if this will happen every time I'm outside at night in the woods and stuff, like if it's following me or him type of thing. So I really want to know that. I'm gonna have to find out sooner or later, so.
December, circa 2018, I was driving to work on a stretch of road that I love but hate. I love it because it's beautiful and they have like a lot of nice houses out there, but hate it because it's freaking creepy. It's called Raccoon Valley Road. And if you're familiar with that, please let me know if it scares you, because it absolutely scares the out of me. Either way, it's just this little 2-lane road. There is this train trestle underpass thing that you have to go through on this little road. I would always go to work at 3:34 a.m. So it's dark outside no matter what time of year it is. And I'm driving alone, and I would get so creeped out. I really blame it on my upbringing, because where I'm from, we don't have it's mostly when it's ghost stories, it's mostly ghost hitchhiker stories. So most of the time, if I was thinking about it enough, I would flip my rear view mirror up when I would go on Raccoon Valley Road, because I just knew if it was ever going to happen to me, it would be on that road. But this one day in particular, I was very, very, very nervous, driving that morning. I was really not worried about something jumping out at me. I was worried about a deer running across the road and making me wreck or hurting my car or something like that. So I was going really slow, which, boy, that made it even worse. But either way, I'm going along and I get really close to that train trestle underpass thing, and I flip my mirror up just in case. And when I went through, you have to go through really slow, because if there's another car coming, 2 people can't go at once. So I'm going really slow. And when I did, I stupidly looked out my passenger window, and there are beams, that hold the train tracks up, and they're wooden beams, and they're crisscrossed, and there's a lot of them. It leaves no room for anybody to truly be standing there. But when I looked in between the beams, they're crisscrossed. So in between the beams, I saw somebody standing there. I really just saw a head up, from the neck up. And if you've ever watched the movie, it's from 2009 or something. It's called One Missed Call. It's kind of like a Final Destination type of movie, Final Destination meets The Ring. But regardless, if you've ever watched that movie, you know that the main entity, whatever, wears this white mask. If you want to look that movie up, that's what I saw, was somebody standing there with a super pale face. It looked similar to that One Missed Call mask. And I floored it. I didn't care if there was another car coming. Actually, good. Get me out of here. Matter of fact, I tried to call every person I know. They didn't answer. My calls for help were not answered, because it was 4 a.m. and nobody was awake. So what I actually had to do was turn on my phone and turn on the show Friends. I didn't watch it while I was driving. I had it playing down beside me in my console, because I needed to feel like there were, people with me. But someone finally called me back. It was one of my friends. They finally called me back, and I was freaking out. And I was like, listen, I don't know what just happened. And she was like, well, probably what it was either somebody doing some D-rugs, and they was just doing wild stuff, standing there or something. And she said somebody might have nailed a mask up or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I hope you're right. Absolutely. And so when I went back through there later that evening, I went really slow through it again, and just to see if a mask or something there. There wasn't. And the way this thing or person was standing, which was straight up, literally straight up, there is no way that someone of that size would have fit to stand under that underpass the way I saw them through the beams. And if they were through the beams, they would be slanted forward. And this thing was not. Either way, I have no clue what it was. All I can tell you is I had 20 panic attacks on the way to work that morning. And ever since then, especially when it's cold outside or when it's really foggy outside, because it was that day, because it was in December, all I can think about is how I had the bejesus scared out of me on Raccoon Valley Road.
Born and raised in the Appalachian Mountains my whole life, and I have some stories. This one actually happened just about 2 months ago. A friend of mine calls me at 2:15 in the morning, okay? This is one of the nights that I was awake at that time, conveniently. and his friend had dropped him off somewhere. He was walking through town and he needed a ride. So I was like, where are you going, man? He said he was going over to our friend's house. Now, our friend lives about 2.5 miles from my house if you take the back way, okay? He lives in what's considered the county. I live in what's considered the city, but we're pretty close by, if you take the back roads. If you go through town, which is the way that I went to pick him up and take him over there, it is about 3.5 or 4 miles, okay? And when I say through town, it's you go through the one red light and a couple of stop signs. But, so I go pick him up, and we go through town. I get over to our friend's house. Now, our friend's property has a lot of activity, okay? Our friend was out of town at the time, but the other guy was staying there. And there has been so much activity. There's a lot of lore attached to that property to begin with. Then there's been a lot of unalivings of animals that are unexplained, really. And then there's these sounds that we joke around and say they're pterodactyls. You hear at night. I tell myself they're mountain lions because mountain lions were released here last year. I think there were like 80 or 100 of them to try to get the population up. So that's what I tell myself they are, but they really don't sound like even the screeching sounds of a mountain lion, okay? The property's weird. So I'm not bothered by driving at night, okay? I like to drive by myself at night in the wee hours of the morning sometimes in the Appalachian Mountains alone. Believe it or not, I find it very therapeutic. But this one night I had a really uneasy feeling. So I was kind of debating. I was like, do I go back through town or do I go the short way and go home and get to bed as quick as I can? And I know this road like the back of my hand. So I was like, either way, I was fine. But I was like, by this point it's 3 o'clock. I'm like, I'll take the back way. I know the roads, it's fine. So I get to the bottom of the little road. I turn left, and you're on this little curvy road that's a 2-lane, and you go around one huge curve they're both blind curves. You can't see anything. And then you come into the other one, and as you come out of it, you take a right onto this little road. This is where you're starting to come into the city limits. And you take a right, and you go across this little tiny bridge, and you're going up an incline and turning kind of in a curve to the left, okay? So you're going up, turning to the left, and then as you get to the top of this hill, you curve back around to the right, okay? There's a house sitting right here in the curve as you're turning into the right. Then there's a house maybe, it's like a subdivision-ish as far as distancing between them, but the next house is like, a few yards over from this one, and then there's one more house before you go into the next blind curve on this little road. This little road has no lines on it, okay? If someone is coming to pass you and there's not a lot of room on either side of the road, you may just get knocked off the road if that person's not considerate. But as I'm turning around, coming around that top of that curve, and I'm curving around that first house, coming around the curve of the first house to the right, I look over, and there's a deer standing in the second house's yard, and it's looking at me, okay? This is nothing up here. There are deer everywhere, okay? I just saw deer yesterday in my mom's yard, and she lives in the city limits, okay? But one thing she always told me is there's always one more. When you think that the last deer has passed in front of you, there will always be another one come out of nowhere. You won't see it coming, and it'll just dart in front of you. She's like, always wait for the always one more deer. So that's never proven not to be true. Well, really, until this night. But I see the deer over here, and I'm trying to decide, okay, did it come from this left side of the road? Are there deer over here getting ready to dart in front of me? Or is this the last deer getting ready to go in this direction? Or is this the only deer? So I'm looking over to the left. I glance back over here, and this deer is bipedal. It is on 2 legs. Distorted face staring at me, and it had that look, like those not deer. It's like, it looks kind of like it's about to buck up, and its shoulders are kind of down, and I'm like, what? No. So at this point, I'm like, okay, just don't look at it. Don't look at it. But I had to look in that direction because I had to see the road. All my instincts were saying, get away, get out of there fast, but I didn't know, again, if there were other deer. So I'm still going like 15 miles an hour, kind of trying to peep the scene, and I'm like, what do I do? So I thought, okay, I'm going to stop. No, I'm not stopping right here with this thing. Absolutely not. So I'm like, okay, I have to suck it up. I take a big deep breath, and I'm like, okay. Glance back over, and now it's a mountain lion on 4 legs. There's no way that this deer had a friend that was a mountain lion, that this deer decided to stand up on 2 legs and just disappear, and then its friend, that the mountain lion, decides to come out from around the corner. This was a matter of about 10 seconds. 5 seconds. Although it felt like it was like an hour in my mind, with all the thoughts going through my mind, it was probably about 5 seconds, if that. This yard is an open yard. There's nowhere, I mean, there are trees kind of back, there's a tree line kind of back behind it, looks to sit behind the house, but the front yard where this deer was standing facing me, there was nowhere for it to go, okay? The first thing that crossed my mind, there has to be a deer and a mountain lion. They have to be just friends. You know how the lamb shall lie down with the lion or something, maybe the deer shall lie down with the mountain lion? No. There was no time for this, okay? This was the same animal-ish, I believe. And to be fair, in my opinion, I believe shapeshifters are probably programs, because I think we're in something like the Truman Show, and there are entities that like to mess with us. But that does not help the feelings of unease in the moment, okay? That did not help my nerves in the least. So when I realize it's a mountain lion and it's still staring at me, nope. I gunned it. I gunned it as fast as I could, and I got out of there, and I was shaking all the way home. But you know, I've always thought I would be cool in a horror movie. I was like, you know, I'll be the one that survives. And this night told me that absolutely not. I would be one of the first ones to be unalived, and I would get my entire crew unalived. I panicked. I mean, I stopped the car. I tried to drive. I wasn't looking at the right. I was an absolute nightmare. But let me tell y'all, whatever that thing was did not give me a good vibe. I don't want to see it again. And honestly, the most uneasy part of it was the bipedal deer. It went from a deer on all 4 legs to a bipedal deer to a mountain lion. And this mountain lion was the size of a regular lion. I mean, I thought they were like smaller or something. No, this was a massive lion size. Looked just like a lion in the face. I didn't realize that's what they would look like. But it went from a deer to a not deer on 2 legs to a mountain lion on 4 legs in a matter of about 3 to 5 seconds. With no changing rooms, no dressing rooms, no nothing. It scared me. That was a big fat no.
Buckle up, because this is a long, crazy, creepy story. Olivia and her grandmother's ex-husband built this house whenever Olivia's mom was only 8 years old. Olivia's mom started having what she thought was like sleep paralysis during the night. Her basement was in the bedroom right next to her older brother, and her younger sister's bedroom was upstairs. One day, Olivia's mom and her friends were playing with a Ouija board. Nothing happened, so they put the Ouija board under the bed and they just didn't think about it again. One day, Olivia's grandmother found the board under her mom's bed, and she got really mad because she believed that Ouija boards were evil. Olivia's grandmother took the Ouija board and she threw it away. So a couple weeks go by and they hear a loud knocking on the door. So it was so loud it was almost more of like a banging instead of a knocking. When they opened the door, there sat the Ouija board right on the front step. The Ouija board that their grandmother had just thrown away a few weeks ago. Olivia's grandmother took the Ouija board and gave it to one of her friends who collected all types of stuff like that. After that, Olivia's mother started having all these really bad dreams. In these dreams, there was a really tall shadow man wearing a top hat that would drag her down the hallway to the laundry room where she would start having seizures. Like not having seizures in real life, but having seizures in her dream. Olivia's mother would tell her mother or Olivia's grandmother about these dreams and she would just brush them off. Eventually, she moved out of the house and the dreams stopped. Fast forward, Olivia's mother has 2 daughters, and Olivia is now 8 years old, and her little sister is just now learning how to crawl. Olivia and her sister would stay at their grandparents' a lot because their parents were always in different states on work trips. The layout of Olivia's grandmother's house was a 3-level house, so whenever you would open the front door, there would be a set of stairs going upstairs and then a set of stairs right beside it going downstairs. When you walked upstairs, there was an open floor plan with the kitchen and dining room and living room all in the same room. Her grandmother had an island in the kitchen, and there were 5 separate lights hanging over the island, and like I said, her little sister had just now learned how to start crawling. One day, Olivia's baby sister is like crawling into the kitchen, and for some reason, the energy just feels like incredibly off. Grandmother was super spiritual, so she felt that something was wrong. So the little sister crawls right underneath the first light in the kitchen. The grandma grabs her up, and the lights start breaking down the line one by one. All the other lights in the house are fine. Okay, now here's where the story gets really crazy. Olivia's mom's room at her grandmother's house became a playroom for Olivia and her sister and her cousins when they were all over. They're all playing there with like Barbies and American Girl dolls, just normal little girl stuff. One day, Olivia falls asleep in her mom's old room, and she has a bad dream. And in this bad dream, there was a creepy, tall shadow man standing in the corner of the room wearing a top hat, just like her mom's old dreams. Did nothing but stand there and stare at her. Now, she told her grandmother about this dream, and her grandmother just brushed it off, and she did not tell her that her mother used to have these same types of dreams. Olivia starts sleeping in her grandmother's bedroom, but every time she would go to sleep, there he was standing in the corner, a tall black shadow figure wearing a top hat, staring at her. Never did anything. He would just stand there staring at her with like blank eyes. And then it started happening everywhere she went to sleep. Every time she went to sleep, there he was. If she fell asleep on the couch, it would be in the corner of the living room, or wherever she fell asleep, that thing was in the corner of the room just staring at her. She said she hasn't stayed at her grandmother's house since she was 13 years old. She was 13 after the very last time that she stayed at her grandmother's house. She got diagnosed with epilepsy. No, she says she doesn't think that this is connected to her mother's dreams where she was having seizures, but I don't know. But for every holiday, they still have to go to her grandmother's house and her grandpa's house because they're divorced. Never stay at her grandmother's house past 8 o'clock. She doesn't know why, but she said 8 o'clock just feels safe. She's there with her family celebrating Christmas, and she has a bunch of little cousins, and one of her little cousins asks her to play Barbies with her. She has to go back into that room where it all started. Shadow Man was in there. Only this time she wasn't sleeping. She had the Barbie in her hand when she noticed him standing in the corner staring at her, looking just the way he always did before. Said a bunch of feelings started all coming over her at once, like she was very overwhelmed with fear and anger. She didn't know why she felt anger, but there was definitely intense anger there. So she grabbed her little cousin up and she took off running. So the Christmas tree was right across the hall from where the playroom was, and it was Olivia's job to pass out Christmas gifts. She went to the back of the tree to grab a gift, and you will never guess what was there. It was a Ouija board. The same Ouija board from all those years ago. Olivia didn't know what to think of it. She had never heard any of the stories from when her mom was a child, so she just grabbed the Ouija board out and she showed it to everybody, and that's when her mom's face went white. And they all gathered up their stuff and they left. Past November, she was hospitalized 3 times in 2 weeks for seizures. They intubated her. Doctors had her on a lot of stuff trying to save her life, but she said when she woke up, there he was, standing in the corner of her hospital room. I don't know why she didn't do this before, but that's when Olivia decided to tell her mom about all the dreams that she had been having for all those years. Her mom got mad at her, and she was like, "How do you know all of this? This isn't funny." Olivia never knew that her mom had the same dreams when she was little, so she wasn't making it up. Turns out Olivia and her mom were both seeing the exact same creepy shadow man with a top hat in their dreams years apart.
If you've ever felt watched or seen something just beyond the light, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. As always, stay safe, stay aware, and question everything.